What's up, y'all? Andy tuning in one more time, and back on this video. Sorry about my voice; it's a little heavy on me right now. Kind of feeling under the weather, but I'm okay. Keeping my spirits up, keeping the juices flowing. Today I want to go over this new book. This new book I've been reading. It's called The China Study. It's written by a father and a son. It goes by Colin Campbell and Thomas M. Campbell II. You might be thinking, the China Study don't even sound too interesting. I agree, nothing about race, nothing like that. But when I first heard the title, wasn't too impressed. I didn't want to, judge a book by its cover, but there it is. I cracked it open, and it was cool. It was decent. It was mainly about the life of Colin Campbell, the father of the son here. And just a brief little summary about him and his upbringing. He was a young man growing up in some farmland with his father, his mother. I think he had siblings as well. It was like a dairy farm, so they would milk the cows. They had chickens that would lay eggs. They would eat the eggs. I'm pretty sure they sold the cows for meat. Pretty sure they ate the cows for meat. Real stereotypically traditional American household. And he went to college. He was the first in his family to go to college. Some of his highlights I wrote down here in my notes. He went to Cornell University for his master's, PhD. He went to MIT. He went to Virginia Tech. All pretty big schools, mainly on the East Coast. But great accomplishments, just period. Regardless of what he did afterwards, great accomplishments. Even if he didn't, but he did. So. I want to go about how he basically switched it around. He went from supporting the dairy farm industry, which I'm not knocking nobody, I'm not trying to hate, but he was brought up in that world where he thinking that protein, cow's milk, drinking 2 quarts in a day, whole milk, whatever it might be. Make sure you get your eggs, your beef, your pork for your protein, your chicken for your protein. Get the most protein as you could in your diet in one day. Some of the things that went on in his life. His father passed away from heart disease, I believe, at the age of 70, which is to you it may sound old, but as a young man right there, 70 years old, towards the end possibly, but hey, 70 years old, should still be moving around. I got a grandfather at 80, still moving around. Hope he could change his life, but hey, it is what it is. And so it goes about where I want to start is around 1965. Colin Campbell is at Virginia Tech, and he gets sponsored by the National Institute of Health, the NIH, to study the protein gap. So he travels to the Philippines and Haiti. I was rereading this again, and talks about how they wanted to bridge the gap, the protein gap. There's a lot of malnourished kids in the Philippines, in Manila and Cebu, I think, Cebu. I'm not sure how you pronounce that word, but it's one of the two of the biggest cities in the Philippines, and that's where he went to go provide larger amounts of protein to the community. And so he went to go study, see what it was all about, see what he could do, see how he could finagle the system and how he could resolve it, find a solution to the dilemma. It turns out a lot of the kids from 10 years old and under were suffering from liver cancer, which is a disease that mostly in the West, people, adults have this disease in the West at around 30, 40, 50, 60. But children from 10 years old and under are suffering from a very critical disease, liver cancer. And he wanted to know why. And kind of the breaking point that I was reading, it says an Indian obscure medical journal provided an experiment involving liver cancer and protein consumption in 2 groups of lab rats. One group was given aflatoxin, which was a toxin that he worked on. He goes into the book goes on in more detail, but aflatoxin with diets containing 20% protein. The second group of lab rats was given the same amount of aflatoxin, or AF, is how they refer it in the book, with diets containing 5% protein. And he goes on how like the lab rats with the diets of the lesser amount of protein, the 5% protein, were not seeing liver cancer rates, and the ones fed 20% protein were. And that's kind of where he switched his point of view. He started doing research, and I'll go read just a little bit out the book. And that's where he wanted to do research on lab rats. And on page 38, the nature of science, what you need to know to follow the research, he goes about saying that he didn't want to do it, have so many rats and mice go through this process of research in the lab, which is not the most humane, especially following a plant-based diet. But he used thousands of rats in his, I think, 20 plus years of research. And he goes on and on and on about how rats that were given this toxin, the AF, the aflatoxin, regardless of how much toxin you gave them, as long as you gave less amounts of protein, the rats would not develop cancer, tumors, or later experiment the foci, which is the early beginnings of cancer. And just a brief little summary, I'll go deeper in depth, focusing on a chapter at a time or a certain section that really interests me. I really recommend people reading this book. I was mind blown, man. As more I get into this information that I think we should all have at our disposal as young children and teenagers and adults, we're not. And it's a little frustrating, but back to the literature. Man, it's called the China study. And so he's working on these lab rats after a certain amount of time, and he's noticing that he's getting statistically significant results, which is hard to get in science. In science, you need a large amounts of statistically significant results for you to pile some evidence toward a thesis, and to have it to be not proved, but at least a good amount of evidence to back up your claim or claims. Which is tough, man. Which is tough. I give it up to Colin Campbell. That's just one brief summary of the China study and how he started it. It went from lab rats, for many, many, many years, and it came to the point where I'll go into it more depth. But the China study started through a doctor from China. He approached Colin Campbell, and they wanted to do research on actual human beings, which is a very controversial way of doing research, because somewhat messed up to do it on rats, but they're not humans. So for the most part, it's approved. At least back then. I'm not sure about how it works now. But to work on human beings and do research on human beings, it's a little, on the gray side. But they were able to do it on human beings, and it was incredible. Because the population in China, or at least they studied the population according to like your genes and your race, your ethnicity is pretty homogenous. They're typically all Chinese. It's not like here in the United States you find people from different races, countries, different backgrounds, right? In China, they were really focusing on the same race, the same homogenous background according to whatever genealogy, but it was really focusing on how they were living, either rural or in urban cities, and what they were eating. So instead of focusing on race, stuff like that, that was kind of set aside. It was a factor that they all had in common. Now they were focusing on diet, and this is what he was working, and he's been working. I'm not sure if he's still alive. I need to finish the book, but that's kind of his thesis. A brief summary I wrote here. China study, which started in 1983. They found 8,000 statistically significant associations between various dietary factors and disease. And basically the two biggest claims that they make was people who ate the most animal-based foods got the most chronic disease, and people who ate the most plant-based foods were the healthiest and tended to avoid chronic disease. Two very bold statements, especially nowadays with like, oh, get your protein, this and that. I can look outside my window and I can see 2 or 3 fast food restaurants that serve mostly, plant-based foods, so readily available. You can go to your grocery store, your nearest market, however, whatever you have around you, and you can see it for yourself. I'm not lying. See it for yourself. And it's maddening, man. It's maddening how a lot of people, at least back then, the argument was that the animal-based protein was the highest quality. But he goes on in page 30, saying that protein quality really refers to those that provide, upon digestion, the right kinds and amounts of amino acids needed to efficiently synthesize our new tissue proteins, meaning amino acids to make new proteins. But basically, the highest protein quality does not equal the most healthy, because the number one protein quality, the highest protein quality for us human beings to consume is human flesh, because it's so similar to our enzymes, right? We're the same, right? But we're not cannibals. We're not meant to be cannibals here on this earth, so it's not right. So the second highest quality protein that we're able to consume is animal flesh. But animal flesh, according to this study and all kinds of other studies, is not the healthiest. But what about the poorest protein quality, which is plant-based proteins? They were saying, at least back then, that this was the claim, this was the reason to not be vegetarian or plant-based, saying that maybe lacking one or more of the essential amino acids, but as a group, the plant-based group, whatever vegetables and fruits, grains and legumes, as a group, they do contain all of the essential enzymes, or amino acids, that we are now able to make in our bodies. I believe there's 8 or 9, depending on how you want to count them and group them up. But being plant-based, consuming the lowest protein quality equals the healthiest, and I'm mind blown. One, even though I'm vegetarian, I'm mind blown. Two, it seems like everything is backwards. I kind of been seeing this, but having research. I was a bio major in school, and I know that research, it moves mountains, it moves worlds. It proves to the public that it's just not some mumbo jumbo. It's not some hearsay, she say. It's not that. If we can prove it, and it has been proven, man. This research has been going on since the 80s. It's 2021. How is it not that we talk about it? How is it not that it's not in our literature, in our books that we read in school? This has to come to a stop, and it already has. It's just they put piles of trash over this information. They put it to the side. They sweep it under the rug, and it's the reason why I want to make this channel, and to promote this type of information and encourage others to read it. Because if I'm the only one reading, cool, that's good for me. But what if other people start reading this? What if other people start actually seeing the facts and the research? We start to question our living situations, the way we, feed ourselves and think. All right, I'll come back with more of an in-depth, focus on each chapter, or what I find most interesting and probably most helpful. But there's one more video, y'all. It's Andy tuning in. Hope you have a good day. It's a little sunny, so I might go for a walk. I'm sorry for my voice. A little under the weather, but I'll be alright. I'll be alright. Alright, y'all take care, man. Peace.